Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Vigeant Jnr. Check that bad boy out. It's the first ever limited edition, high quality, comfortable feel, versatile, supernatural strength channel hardcore arm wrestling shirt. I say versatile, it can be worn in so many scenarios, whether skiing, drinking beer, watching birds, watching football, street fighting, shagging or cow tipping. Yes, anytime, any occasion. And if you want one, ladies and gents, guess what? Links in the description. As you might expect, not necessarily the most technically efficient people in the world. Copy and paste that link into your browser, get it ordered. Look on the bright side, you're definitely not going to look any worse than I do, unless you too are a fat bastard. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mother Fluffin' Show. Neil Pickup in the house, and as you will notice by the fact that the pig is in the background, it's time for real talk with Rob Vigeant Jr. Now, Rob, firstly, mate, welcome back to the show. Great to have you on. Since we spoke last, you've become a YouTube sensation.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean,
hey.
It's a combination of me talking about things that rub me is easy and just having a lot of time on my hands. I never looked at the YouTube venue as the YouTube idea as anything I would ever take part in. But like I said, if I get a chance to just rip on something, I can usually rip without taking a breath for about 15 minutes. So I said, why not? And depending on the person that wants to share some info or rant, that's pretty much what it is. It's kind of like a potpourri of you never know what you're going to get.
No, we've had quite a few questions in, mate. At the end of the last episode with you, I put a note out for people to send me questions, send me messages for you, comments in the comments section, and they've done just that, dude. Remember, for anybody out there watching this show, if you want to do the same, you can email us on supernaturalstrengthchannel@gmail.com. That's supernaturalstrengthchannel@gmail.com, mother fluffers. If you've got any more questions for the next episode with Rob, but we're going to pick up where we left off, and this question came up from a number of people a number of times, and it's actually very well timed, mate, because I'm pretty sure that this is probably one of your most memorable victories, and it ties into what we're going to talk about. The question basically, while they came in very similar forms, was around your most prized victories, wins that you're most proud of. Again, some of the people drew reference to your channel and the fact that you'd said that you had a period of time where you started to beat some of the top North American heavyweights. Now, I know Gary Roberts posted something today where you got a win in, I'm going to say, Nevada, or thereabouts, against John Brzenk. Yeah. And I wanted to sort of start there and just sort of get the history of that whole thing, mate. Where did that come about? What was the event?
All right, so that was it was a money tournament right outside of Vegas at Hawthorne, and it was in 2008, I believe.
Okay.
Now, being one of those guys who never had a good training regime, most of what people knew about me and thought how to gauge me was really the guy who didn't train. But when I moved out to Vegas, I was a fish out of water, and my only friends were the arm wrestling guys that were out there. So I was hanging out with, it was
Ryan
the first time I had,
Locker,
Ryan Costino, Lenny Locker, and Eric Spoto. Mm-hmm. So my outlet for hanging with people was banging hard, 2 days a week. Yep. And then, between my job, I was actually going to the gym. So I had like a 6-month stretch of really rocking it. And we went out to Nevada, and it was a small tournament, relatively small. There was good guys there. So, like in my class, I pulled the 200-pound class. John was in the 225s. And in my class, I had, like, Kenny Hughes was supposed to be the guy to try to come upset me. A lot of good guys in there in the mix that were good. I believe I pulled heavyweights, too.
Was Kenny the best of the Cali lads at that time? Was he sort of the top of the California?
Yeah. He was the guy that probably behind Tom Nelson. Tom Nelson was on a good run in those years as well. So
the other guy that I always remember, and I might be talking rubbish in terms of the time, but he had a good run around that time. Was Brian Brandon not on a real charge, or there or thereabouts, or was it earlier that Brian
was kind of checkered in there, but him and I never actually met until the Wall series. So I saw videos of Brian for a good long time, but never really met up with him until the Wall series, which was, almost 10 years later. So I went out there. John pulled 225s. I was 200 pounds. And we made it to the overall. But the overall is 3 people. And in John's class, there was only a handful of guys that he decimated. I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but we're talking John Brzezinski, right? So the year before, I pulled John Brzezinski at Mohegan Sun. And it was a money tournament. And I hung him up in the straps good. I hung him up good. But I made the mistake of getting too eager. I got, a super boner and went for a press and didn't protect my arm at all. And he kind of ripped through. An opportunist, more polished guy on the table. I always said, you're not going to beat John with catching him on a mistake. You got to just beat him, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't fuck up. Now, knowing that, I had a plan if I pull him and get the match to stop, and I felt more trained. And people say, we pulled the overall and the match happened as it happened. And people say, oh, well, he let you in the hook. And I said, well, that could be one of 2 ways. I think both of us are known for our hand strength. So when we felt our hand threatened, we both naturally curled. And secondly, okay, let's say he did let me in. I was a 20-pound lighter guy, and I pulled him in a hook when at that point in time he was going to Zloty and letting Rustam bang on him and letting Edmir Faraku, who was a WAF champion guy, bang on him. He was just holding everybody in overalls and just hammering them. So I'm like, even if he did let me in there at that point in time, when he made the choice to put me away and throw his shoulder on it, he couldn't. And
I would say that was my take on the match. It looked like John was confident as hell, let you go into there, or certainly was happy to go into there, And let's be honest, John didn't mind arm wrestling in that position. And he had a natural position that he got into there, a defensive holding position. We've seen him use it throughout his career. And it looked like he was soaking it up and looked comfortable. And then thought, okay, it's getting hard now, I'm going to finish. And he went to finish, and there was a sticking spot.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think me and John, in terms of where we're really strong on a table, I think people hitting John to that, 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position, hitting him over, they think that they've almost got him. But his comfort in sitting there, because his arm is so strong, I mean, he's very comfortable there. That's
I've seen him
where
sit
he'll
there
let
with
guys die on his arm. And I'm very much the same. So, when you get eager to have to hit a guy like John, I think that whether it was kind of comfortable or toying, that is his spot that he likes to pull from if he's in a tough match. He sits there and tucks and is very stoic and likes to let people bleed. But I do believe that was more of a comfort space for him as opposed to him toying. Because I gave him hell in Mohegan Sun because people say, oh, well, he let you have that. He let you look good. Really? Because he went and lost his very next match in a money match. So it took enough out of him that he lost his next round from Mohegan Sun. And then when we pulled there in Hawthorne, overall, call it what you want, but he was still dusting everybody else that he was pulling in overalls and messing with them. So for me, that was a real gauge finder on whether it was play or not, that I could be in the mix on an arm level, because at that time I feel like he was one of the best hookers, if not the best hooker in the world in that time frame.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good.
It was a huge win. It didn't garner much attention because people, just depending on who you are, want to put value into something. But, I do believe I believe that I had more matches that day. I know I did. And I was about 20 pounds lighter, and he did his damnedest to try to end that match. And I put the brakes on it because that low end there happens to be a strong suit for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, on that day, did you have any issues with anyone else, or would you say that you were in a particularly... I mean, obviously, you say you've been out there hitting it hard with the lads in Vegas. The guys who don't know, I mean, most people will know of Eric, and from a bench press perspective and a general, he's ridiculous strong perspective, but maybe not that at that time he was focused heavily on arm wrestling and was arm wrestling pretty regularly. They won't know Lenny Locker, pretty solid lightweight guy, went anywhere from sort of 65s to 76s. Pretty solid, liked to hook. And the other guy that you mentioned, obviously there, Ryan Constantino, very much the shoulder press, not the dead wrist press, shoulder press, tucked and tight. And Ryan was pretty bloody strong.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah, Ryan, great dude as well. All the Vegas lads were cracking guys. Ryan was strong as balls.
Yeah, the wonderful part about it is, even if you were a standalone guy that was stronger than everybody, we had a good enough kind of communication and bond where if somebody like me needed the edge taken off, I would stay there until I became garbage. And then, the next guys down, like Lenny and Ryan, would be hammering and they'd be garbage. And at some point in time, 15 minutes deep, we were all equals, and it all just
leveled out.
Heart and grind. And we would do that on the regular. And, but at that particular tournament, that was a good one. And I started a good run from there on.
Yeah, no, I want to pick up on that. And we're going to go back to this in a minute to sort of pick up the second bit of the question around other notable wins, because I'm sure I know there are some other big ones in there, and I know that you've hung up some really solid and well-known heavyweights. But I just wanted to pick up on that a little bit. From my perspective, mate, we've talked about it many times. You are the type of lad who is very much confidence-driven and also can be motivated and go on a tear, can be not giving of a fluff, and anything but go on a tear. Just, pop up at an event, not do that much. And I think I know you've fallen victim of that a couple of times in your career where I've spoken to you a month ahead of the event or something and you've not really been even involved, your head's not on it.
Yeah,
what did that do for you after the John win? Did that sort of bolster your confidence a great deal? Was that the reason why you started pulling strong?
Yeah, I was in a good place. I think I was in a good place with training arm wrestling. I think I was in a good place with being in the gym. I mean, I didn't really have any nagging injuries or pains or aches. I was just in a good place to start, on that path. So, of course, knowing what I felt, regardless of what it seemed like, and knowing where I felt me and John stood and his stance with everyone else in the world, regardless of how people want to play that, I knew the data I took from that, and it gave me a lot moving forward. And, to say, the funny thing is with me, I think there is a level of prejudice, and I don't want to play the poor me card. But when people say, oh, you've shown up to events and not done so well, that's compared to when I was pretty much winning everything that I got into, but then me not doing well would come in and still be in the finals. I was never blown out of an event. Since the day I started this game, I've never gone 2-0, never not been in the finals. The first event I walked into, I won. The second one I walked into, I took second place, and so grew the tree. So my bad days that people want to throw in my face are like losing to other studs of the class, like
Todd or someone like that,
or Kenny Smith or something like that. They want to throw in my face. I lost to other guys that are on a top 10 ranking in any list. So my bad days were still high days.
Yep.
They just weren't taking first.
Mm-hmm. But your focus has been shaky.
Well, it's not that I'm a lazy or distracted person. I've had life circumstances that, I've had a checkered life. I've had a checkered history. I have no qualms about saying that. And some of it was my own doing. Some of it was a victim of things falling apart around me, and I'm trying to hold the pieces together. And when you have that kind of stuff going on, trying to become I moved from Vegas back across country. I got a new baby. I'm scrounging on how to try to pull a buck together or keep a roof over our head. And then you get these anxieties. I wasn't as worried about going to trainings in the gym as I should have, but I was still an arm wrestler in heart.
Yep.
So this person would still just show up to an event, but I showed up to an event because I loved it. But it was an excuse for me to get away, you could go to a hotel, try something different and get a different environment and relax. But that person was still, I might not have trained for years. I mean, Heather, I was with her for years before she even knew I arm wrestled. And then you called me up to go to Arm Wars, and she's like, "You're going to go to Vegas? I was going to bring you to Vegas? Like, you must be, like, serious about this." So we already had a baby. We were together long before I had a baby before she even knew I was an arm wrestler. That was how long my hiatus was before I pulled. So it's not necessarily a focus. It's more or less like once you have kids and stuff, you realize how fast time goes by and things go by. I mean, it's not 100% lack of drive and focus. It's more or less that just time got the best of me sometimes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you can look at that two ways. You're also the guy that, you know, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example, but you're one of those guys that if someone gets a win on you, they'll dine out on it forever. I mean, there's a few of that, you know, where I've beaten Rob, and there's a number of those going around that people will always raise again. Trying to think of it. I mean, Philip, you could say that, you know, he's got an enormous amount of notoriety, and you can't knock the lad. I'd do the same. If you've got, and to be honest, 90% of arm wrestlers do the same. You get a big win on someone, you're proud of it.
Right.
You're proud of that. And it sort of works two ways, because you're at a caliber of arm wrestler that if somebody beats you, gets a win on you, under whatever circumstances, you know that footage is gonna come up a few times.
People have a way of looking at things. Again, it depends on who you are. They have a way of holding your head underwater. You know, on one of my comments, we've been trying to do the comments on the YouTube channel, which is a very slippery landscape, you know, just to try to answer people's questions. If people want to see something with training, I'm not too hype on the training because my little area is too tight. And I think there are people out there like, Ray and Giannis doing training videos. I mean, I'm not going to try to, what I bring to the table is my own weird stuff that is from my perspective. So the people on the channel are like, when I did is it strength or technique conversation, you know, I don't know if you caught that video, but it's a question people talk, is it strength, is it technique? So at the end, I was kind of like, I think the separating factor at the end of the day is strength. And then some asshole got on there and was like, "Oh, I guess that's what happened when you pulled Hutchings. He was just too strong. Like he's your daddy and this and that." And I know you're probably trolling me, but again, on many shows, like I haven't grabbed that man's hand in 5 years. If I want to go back on 5 years on any arm wrestler's career, well, Ryan Bowen was still $170. You know, Levon was getting crushed out of world championships, but now he's the world champ. I mean, I got wigs on Dave Chafee within a 5-year span. I mean, you can go back and back and back and like, but it's almost like a smear campaign. It's like, so you got one guy you could throw in my face within the last how many years? And you got one guy and you keep like holding my head in the water when it's been 5 years.
Also, let's be honest here, you lose to Todd Hutchins. So? I
mean, the guy won A1 and Zloty and every other major championship, and they're like, that's like, you lost to John Brzenk. It's like, okay.
yeah. That's how I see it. I mean, like Todd isn't a bum, is he? I mean, there's
people want to hold you, depending on what you want. They want to just throw something to bring you, you know, to some level, depending on who you are. I could get by a lot better in this life by being uber like, yes, sir, and all this stuff, but that's just not me. I'm not, if I feel it, I'm going to say it, and, you know, I'm kind of past defending it, but yeah, I've seen a lot of things hit me. I've had people talk shit about a placing I had when I was 2 years deep in the sport. It's just the way it is. And, yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting run, but I've had good runs and I've had hiatuses, so.
You ever heard of a boxer called Joe Calzaghe?
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe Calzaghe, let's talk about him for a minute, okay? Because he reminds me a bit of you. Well, the funny thing is with Joe Calzaghe, you had a strange period of time with Joe Calzaghe where he wasn't fighting everyone. He wouldn't get in the fight. And there was slings and arrows coming in, shade being thrown his way like you never seen the likes of, you know? Oh, Joe Calzaghe won't fight this guy. Joe Calzaghe swerving, ducking, won't fight this guy. Never fought that guy. Is he that good? No, I don't think he's that good because he hasn't fought this guy, that guy, the other guy. Later in his career, it comes out. It comes to the front that Joe Calzaghe was up for fighting anyone, anywhere, anytime, regardless of circumstances. There were other things that came up that prevented some of the fights from coming around, but it was never that Joe Calzaghe was that guy. He was having all kinds of issues in his personal life, but he was still
pursuing the fight and wanted the fight. And to make things more interesting, in the latter stage of his career, you started to see Joe fight pretty much everybody there was to fight, actively going out there and pursuing them and doing really, really well. And he's since garnered a massive amount, just much more respect generally from everyone. I think within boxing, some people probably had that awareness, you know what I mean? If you were on the inner circle, he was that guy that you were happy to let the general perception of him take a nosedive, but the guys in the game knew he was a grade A1 bad mother, and they didn't really want that fight, you know? And that's what became quite clear, that most people, it was the other way. They were happy to sort of sidestep him, you know? And all the guys at the time who were getting the credibility, people like Chris Eubank, when he fought Calzaghe, came out and openly said, you know, one is real. This is a bad man, let me tell you now. He's serious. And I always think there's a little bit of a likeness there to some extent, because you're that guy, because, you know, you're in a place where you don't necessarily need to go out and pursue it. You get people saying, oh, well, is he proven? Has Rob done this? Has Rob done that? And yet you'll pop up and remind everybody that you're pretty bloody serious. And as you say earlier, you've had some big wins against big, and big being the operative word, big opponents and big heavyweight arm wrestlers when you've weighed, what is your heaviest weight, mate? About 210, 205, there or thereabouts most of the time?
I think I might have been in the low two teens when I did the 2009 ROTN. And that was because my cousin had an idea of just like, let's go to Golden Corral like 4 times a day and just pack you full of like calories. And, you know, so I showed up at about 215 post weigh-ins. I didn't have to weigh anything in, and that was about the biggest I got. I was still in pretty good shape.
Has Gary put that out yet? Has Gary posted that video?
He put a video. So one of the videos, you can see some of the little run that I had there was like of the after pull when me and Brent Rockers were jarring at each other and I was measuring people's arms. So in that event, that was an event that I went into. It was very similar to a wall, not as many numbers, but basically if you thought you could place, you were there.
Yeah.
And I went into the heavyweight class because the year before I won the 200-pound class. And in my mind, I felt that I had pulled everybody in that class. I had beat everyone in that class. And I felt that I wanted to see where I stood overall. You know, and of course in 2008 is when I beat John, or call it whatever you want. So I was feeling I was on a good trajectory of really just, you know, moving into something else. And I could have played it safe and been the guy who just dominated his class, but I didn't feel good about that. I wanted to, you know, stretch my legs and see.
Yeah.
And left and right, out of all those guys in that room, guys with national championships and world titles and everything, I was on the A side of both left and right coming into the finals of that event.
Mm-hmm.
Final four.
I mean, if you haven't seen that, guys, go over to OMTV and hunt down the footage from the Ruler of the Nation. Great event. All the superstars of the sport at the time were there pulling. And it's one of those that's going to be etched in the history books and the memory for a long, long period of time. And it was a great showing for you there.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I got some wins on guys that were, you know, we could argue the fact that, you know, of when I've pulled Dave and the wins that I've had on him. I know that I pulled him within a month or two of him going to WAF and cruising through WAF. So he went to WAF and then dieted down into the 242 class. When I pulled him, he was 270, and then he went to WAF and walked through it. And I think in the finals he beat Tokarev, and he just cruised through it like WAF was nothing for him. And, you know, I had got wins on him in that same time frame. So, you know, here's a 242 WAF champion that I'm pulling when he was 270, and I'm still giving him the fits.
I mean, that people don't know that and won't have seen that, though. That's the thing.
I think people see what they want. They glaze over it. They write their own narrative. You know what I mean? They say, oh, well, you know, I remember in that same event in ROTN when I was going to pull Don Underwood, some of the guys in the crowd, because Don is probably, you know, likened to myself. You know, he could, You don't know who's showing up there. You don't know what the guy's going to be depending on what's going on in life. And they were like, you're going to beat this guy. He's basically mediocre. He's a bum. And when he hit me the first time, I stopped it, but I could feel the surges. And I was like, holy God. I said, is either I'm not where I thought I was or people are lying to me about him.
Mm.
And then again, after we had our match, I won that round. He went on to basically go to one of your arm wars and smack everybody there. And then he went and beat, I think he won the Arnolds by beating Devin. And then he went on your rooftop and, beat Travis and basically everybody there, within that couple month frame.
Yeah, his only loss that night was to Devin. To be fair, Michael Todd, Dom had a great day that day for a number of reasons, which we won't go into. Dom was really on the tear. He was very strong. His first match should have been a very hard one, but he actually snapped Yoshi Kanai's bicep in the very first match. Literally, the first round of the pull, he blew Yoshi's bicep off the bone. But Ron Bath had been over and pulled Yoshi in Triple XL probably, I want to say maybe a month and a half, 2 months earlier, something like that. And Don was also at that event, and that's where we sort of made that as a first round match, i.e. Don and Yoshi. But Yoshi had an amazing match with Ron Bath. Probably, arguably my favourite ever arm wrestling match, I'm going to say. It was ridiculous. They ended up drawing 3-3 in just a screaming career ender. That day, Don was also pulling really strongly. And off memory, I think he beat Marcio.
And Gigantes or something. He beat like 3 guys that day.
I think he could, yeah. No, that was the Gregatus boys he beat in Manchester. At the Triple XL, I think it was Marcio that he pulled. Yeah. I think it was Marcio. And he was on a tear, hence his invite to the gathering. It's funny because I was watching a show the other day. I always have a laugh with the Beauty and the Beast show. Travis was on there with Gary. If you've not got over to Gary Roberts' channel on TV, guys, do get yourself over. Check out Beauty and the Beast. Funny as hell. And we have a bit of banter in the Travis can tell a story, can't he? Not necessarily the most accurate details in some instances. He remembers what he wants to remember, but there it is. But I do love Travis. He's a great dude, but goddamn, he's got some shaky-ass memory on occasion. And he said, there was no good arm wrestlers, or nobody at the time was solid who was invited to the gathering. Now, at the gathering, number one, he spoke about Andrei Pushko, and why was Andrei Pushko not there? Andrei Pushko was invited to the gathering. Andrei Pushko didn't want to do it because it was the same time as Worlds and also because he had a contract with the PAL. Simple, done. That's why. Okay? Was he invited? Yes. And this was at the same time as the Mesquite Worlds. Okay? But if you looked at the people that were in the gathering, okay, you had Ryan Espy, who was very large at the time and pulling hard, pulling well. You had Yoshi Kanai, who was really rock strong, had given Farid Usmanov all he wanted just before that. You had Richard Lutkus, you had Michael Todd, you had Devon Larratt, you had Travis himself, you had Don Underwood, who, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier on. Some guys get on a tear, got on a purple patch, and right at that time, Don was on a tear. Been doing well everywhere he pulled, been beating big names, and he earned his spot there. You also had Tim Bresnan, who was extremely strong at that time, So, I think it's a very, very far stretch to say that there weren't the best guys there. The best guys were there. The best guys were invited. This was before Denis Saplenkov got to his high standing. He wasn't there yet, Yeah. A number of the guys who were there at the MGM Grand would have beaten Dennis at that time, So, I think everything's on perspective. You've got to look at the time frame and when it was set out. But I like the fact that you made that comment because I think if you chart back the history of most of the best arm wrestlers in the world, you'll see periods of time when they were really hot and breathing fire, and other times when they weren't necessarily on the game, and that's more real life. That's actually what happens, So
when you talk about this game where people span it over the course of decades, it's simply impossible to be on all the time. I mean, in any other sport, people have bad games. Football, they throw interceptions, they get sacked, they get injured, they don't come back the same, and then the next season maybe they do, they don't. It's impossible to be on all the time. And I mean, there are people who try, but those are people, if they grind they ride the rails too hard, they end up with an injury. And so I've yet to see somebody that's perfect all the time.
Well, one of the interesting things there was that at that time, Dave Chaffee had pulled the WF Worlds just beforehand, but Dave wasn't invited there purely and simply because of the fact that he hadn't been getting the results that the other guys who were there had.
Right.
And we looked at who'd been doing what and who'd been getting the best results. Chaffee wasn't quite at that level, and yet he won the WF 242 class in Mesquite, you know?
Yeah, well, WAF is the premier event and the end all, depending on who you ask. If somebody wants to make a case against you, not winning WAF means you're garbage. But then if they want to make a case for you, WAF is exactly what you said. Like, yeah, you can win WAF, but you might not be getting the results out there elsewhere. So it's all in whatever storyline you want to write.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the interesting one off the back of that, when we put that out there, I put a comment out on it. And again, somebody came back and said, yeah, but the WAF's not that hard when it's not in Europe. The reason being that a lot of guys from Europe don't attend. I think that my answer to that would be, I don't know. It depends on the year and it depends on the weight class. If you can always make an argument around that. Sure, I appreciate that it is tougher to win in Central Europe. That's purely logistics because so many countries can literally drive there. So yeah, it makes sense. And I would say the toughest events are when the events are in Central Europe. But regardless of that, if you wanted potential and where Dave Chaffee's gone on to be, you only have to look at the guy's record, and Dave was rock strong at that time. Also, I don't think there's necessarily an appreciation of the undercurrent of heavyweight arm wrestling in North America. There are some really solid pullers. There's some really solid pullers there now that don't necessarily get the credibility, and yet they're pretty bloody strong. Guys like Robbie Burnett, Passmore, who are strong, they're solid. I'd like to see how they did if they came over and pulled in some of the bigger events. I really would be interested to see what they could do with a settling period, If they went out and pulled in Europe for a couple of years, got themselves used to the style, I'd love to see how they'd do.
Yeah, there's a real, I think, a biased worldwide ideology that looks at the United States like we're second rate because we don't have these organized clubs or we don't go there. And I hate the mindset that, someone like me, they could be fully legitimized if they just pull the people in Central Europe without North America being in attendance. And I mean, North America only consists of over 500 million people. It's a healthy percentage of the whole world population is in North America. And if North America's best aren't present, they can raise their hand there and say, I'm the best in the world. I won WAF. I won Zloty. But if we're over here and we got a league and we think we're doing good and we say, hey, we're top guys, they go, yeah, shit, you're not competing with Europe. So it's like we need to compete with them to be legitimized, but they don't need to compete with us. There's a thing there about Europe, and that lends to what you're talking about, the heavyweights. People are so quick to dismiss, we don't have as much organization or funding or whatever, but the athletes we do have that are on top they're all very serious. I mean, these guys, yeah, we definitely have talent. It's just, you can't answer the question until you actually see it play out. People don't really know.
I mean, if you look at the roster of the World Arm Wrestling League middleweight division, another thing to mention there is it's a little bit broader, isn't it, than the WAF classes. So you're not talking about a 5 kilo split. I mean, most of the WAF classes on the 5s up to 90 kilo, and then it goes on to the 10.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the WAF-WAL comparison, it's fair to say that it's difficult to make that kind of comparison because, number one, they're a completely and utterly different event. Now, you can say, not just because of the super match versus main draw thing. In the past, when it was tournament format, okay? So 2014, 2015, I think was tournament format as well. You had good guys that came over from Europe, people like Giannis Amelins, who will attest to the fact that it was bloody tough. Now, whether or not that's because it was a bit Wild West and they weren't used to the setups and whatever, there may be a degree of that the other way around as well. Right. So when you get guys that have pulled in North America and they're used to a certain type of arm wrestling, they go over there and they get some guy from Kazakhstan who's got that dead load flash supinating style. I mean, I was watching something the other day, one of my favourite arm wrestlers in the world, Talgat. Are you familiar with Talgat, mate? Oh, just a different level of speed. Unbelievable explosivity. Now, looking at how he arm wrestles, there's just nothing there at all. And then he just, within a split second, hundredths of a second, he lights someone up. Coming forward in a press. Just supinated hard, tight shoulder press. And it's great to watch, actually. Horrible to experience, but great to watch, you know what I mean? Now, that kind of thing takes some getting used to. If you're used to that sort of loaded spit and sawdust saloon start, it's super different to the lab coat, not an ounce of pressure, not an ounce of movement, then bam, it's over with. You know, they're almost like different sports. So I think whenever I throw that kind of comment into the equation, I'm always talking about a bit of a settling period. Like I said a moment ago with the heavyweights, I'd like to see guys like Burnett, Passmore get time to just feel out what the setups are like, a few events under the belt, get a bit of momentum, bit of comfort, and then see how they do.
That's what you see that supports some of the prejudice towards us over here, is because if anybody from WAF or that has done well in Zloty or on the world level comes over here, it will even say when Hermes lost to Matt Mask in the WAL, there's 1,000 reasons why he did something other than lose. Oh, the rules, the starts, the everything. Okay, touche. But when anybody from this country goes to Zloty or WAF and, you know, it's kind of like a period where we're trying to figure things out and we lose, it's don't make excuses for being dominated. You lost. There is no more. That's the end all. You got dominated. I told you Europe's no joke. But then if a European comes over and loses, it's like, well, now what? It's like, well, no. He didn't know the rules. He didn't know the stars. He didn't understand the ref. You know, there's 50 reasons. So there's this almost like no-win situation. But I'm with you. I agree. It's settling in and kind of learning and kind of, I'm a big believer in, data. You got to kind of know what you're grabbing. That's why the scariest opponents for me might not necessarily be the hardest, but it's the people that I've never touched. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to feel. And then once you kind of get some data, you go, okay, all right, now we can work with that. But they're, when you're at that level that they're all good, you need some data.
Do you see a great deal of stylistic difference, mate, between Europe and America in terms of the arm wrestling, just from the technical styles? Or do you think there's too much made of that?
I can see a lot of that even from different training camps, depending on, for instance, I know if I go against somebody that's in Devon's training camp, I know there's a good chance they're probably going to be very comfortable in the straps, and they're probably going to try really hard to dick around and get all the advantage they can. You're not going to get someone to go up there, close their hand, and just rip it. I know that they're going to be strap heavy. They're going to be probably rounded to some degree fundamentally. And I can say that about a lot of camps. If you see somebody that John Brzezinski took under his wing, he's going to probably have some level of hand and wrist control and be very fundamentally sound. And over there, you can see the different countries that have different styles. Like you said, I've watched Kazakhstan. They seem to have a heavy influence on, just very fast, very explosive, very fundamentally sound. And I do think over there, they're a lot heavier on the starts. Yeah. But I also see that they're a chink in the armor I've seen for every top European is I think that they are so proficient and so focused on that lane that if they meet somebody that can throw a chink to that lane, that's like all their chips. They don't really have that
the fallback
move. Yeah. That alternate move. Like if somebody as good as Pushkar was or as good as Zoloev was, when Pushkar pulled Devin or when Zoloev pulled Todd, when it was clear that Zoloev shouldn't have been hooking Todd at that point in time where they were in their careers, Zoloev did not have an answer because he was so conditioned to beating everyone in a hook and so good in a hook that when he got stopped in a hook, he had no idea what to do besides that. It was like their lane is incredibly good, but if somebody has a way of stopping them in that lane, there's no alternate. It's like, this is it. Guns blazing. So that's the one thing I see, I think, I mean, maybe not all of them, but that's the one thing I've noticed with those guys is, do you think that
it's fair to say that's an issue with a lot of arm wrestlers generally, though, mate? I mean, we've spoken about it before. Remember the cock of the walk when you were talking about the guys that can win in different positions? Well, there's almost an extension to that, isn't there? That you become, I think it's difficult not to be, I know I did in my career, you become specialised in certain movements and certain sort of, like you say, aces that you know you're going to serve. But in order to get that to that level of proficiency, you do put all your eggs in that basket. I did, and I know most guys do. They'll have a... Now, I'm not saying if you're in a 6-round super match, do you then have something else to go to? And I think this is what you're alluding to. Yeah, there are better arm wrestlers that do have... John was always great for that, wasn't he? Because he could, okay, that didn't work, I'll get you another way. And it was stunning to watch. I'd like to think that I had that in my arsenal as well. I had a lot of moves. Devon had a lot of moves that, you know, and a lot of other arm wrestlers have been similar to that. But most guys, and particularly in tournament format, if you get something so proficient that you commit to it very, very hard, if you get stopped or hung up there, that transition is very difficult. It's almost like if you go to top roll at blistering speed and a guy puts you in a hook, when it sits back up and you try to amend your position, you're not going to be in your optimum position because you've committed hard, you're out of shape.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty much across the board. I just think I see it more exaggerated in Europe because they are so militaristic, it seems. I haven't been over there. I haven't pulled with them. But it seems they're so militaristic, and they're great at what they do, and I just think they fall a little bit deeper into the death fall. I think that they're less apt because they're so... And this is what I said about, you know, Daniel Mosier. It's not that I don't give Daniel Mosier the nod of being good. It's not that I don't give him the nod of being a great puller. I just think he's so heavy on finishing a match that when it doesn't finish, it's almost unfamiliar terrain for him. It's uncomfortable for him. And
I almost feel sorry for Dan in that respect because I sort of do put Dan into that camp I was just describing where he's committed so much to that silver bullet move that often it may be that he can do a lot of other things, but he's so heavily committed to blitzing you that he's not left anything in reserve. There's no reserve shoot.
The amount of time and training it takes to be that proficient in a move, you're probably not filling in the possible potential gaps elsewhere. If you're one of those people who's just training offensively to be such an offensive guy that you're just drilling and you might have something that nobody can stop. But what if the ref, or what if that other guy's firing on a cylinder that's just a half a second ahead of yours, and now all of a sudden instead of being that guy who's blitzing, you're finding yourself right here. Just that little bit here already puts you in a weird-ass fucking place because your whole game plan you trained on to be that good at is gone.
Walls of Jericho. The whole thing falls apart, doesn't it? Your shoulder connection, your hand and wrist connection. Yeah, I've been there, to be honest. Yeah. I've been there.
People always ask me, like, why don't you develop a hit? I'm like, because you know what? I do have a hit, but it's case sensitive. And I'm generally better for where my body falls to be a position puller. I'm not slow, but I'm a position puller because I plan on the worst case scenario. Because what if the ref turns you under? What if the guy takes off on go? I don't want to be the guy that's so dependent on being first that if I'm not first, my game's shot. You know, because there are going to be those times that the what if in the worst case scenario happens, and I still want to be in the game.
And you've got, let's be honest, you've got every tool in the bloody arsenal. I mean, you pull a good top load, you've got a massive hand, your wrist and hand, in my opinion, are your strongest game, but you've also got tremendous bicep strength. You've also got a really solid hook. So, I want to say you can, when you're in that kind of situation, you can almost afford to take a few more risks, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? You don't have to, you're not as wedded to being able to get your position, and it has to be perfect. You've got a lot of angle. Devon always had that, because he had so much reach. You know, he's going to know, and John, because of that massive hand and the control. He had so much hand and wrist control, and he was so proficient in so many areas. He was world class in pretty much every area.
Right.
So, if you don't take confidence from that, I don't know what you're going to take confidence from, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's all case sensitive. The European landscape, the US landscape, the hows, twos, whys, it's all case sensitive. I don't think there's any clear cut that, this is how you do it and they do it better here or there or whatever. I think it's, you get dropouts that go on to be nothing from Harvard, and you get people who go on to be CEOs of Fortune 5 companies out of community college. It all depends on, it's case sensitive.
It's interesting to me. Do you spend a lot of time looking at the developing nations, the emerging nations? Obviously, we spoke about Kazakhstan. For me, they are the developing elite nation on earth. There are so many absolute top-level pullers that are based now out of Kazakhstan, not necessarily getting the level of respect they perhaps deserve, but I think there's an awareness there that if you're in your rowing boat just off the coast of Kazakhstan, and as you head in there, you look at the map and it says, "Fucking beasties be here." Everybody there is a bad mother fluffer, you know what I mean?
What I think is interesting, though, when you talk about different styles and different camps, and even with Kazakhstan, I do think when there's a lane of success, that kind of like that's what's being taught, that people will be like, this is how this guy won, this is how this guy won. And I do think within the regions and people who experience each other will develop very similar traits and attributes and stuff like that.
Yep.
So you go and throw somebody, if these guys are all like, bone deep diving in there, and then you throw somebody in the mix who's really awkwardly, something they're not experiencing, might have a shit ton of back pressure and wrist and hand, something they're not used to experiencing. They might not have those types of builds, or throw something different in the game. It's not something they're used to either. They're going to be experiencing something a little different. And while you do have some checkered pullers, mixed in there, and it's peppered with top rolls and stuff like that, but I think that's why a guy like Hermes or Arson had such success, because for me, the easiest person to top roll is someone who's trying to hook me. I don't care how fast they are. I love when somebody forces a hook, because I like top rolling from this deep place better than I like it from a straight wrist.
Yeah.
So I guess there's an exposure that, they're great arm wrestlers, but I think they're taught this is how you do it.
Do you think that your style may be a little more susceptible to that European flash start style? Do you think it causes problems for you, and you would need that phase of adjustment? Because I know that you can adjust. I've actually seen you go in a match from being pretty dormant on the start to extremely fast and controlling. So do you feel like if you got out and pulled in Europe, you would adapt your style to arm wrestling against those guys with the blistering speed off the start?
I don't think it would be so much as a adjustment as much as it would be a confidence. Because I've told myself, when people are like, you've never felt anything like these guys over there hitting, and then when I draw back on times when, let's say I've pulled Marcio and he's got a world-class hit, he's proven himself to beat other WAF champions, he's beat the legends of the sport, and incredibly explosive. I'm like, well, I felt that. I felt guys like, we'll say Don again, who's had an amazing hit with a lot of power coming across, and I'm like, when you get in a grind with someone like John or Dave Chafee, these are guys who have won Zloty, they've won Worlds, they've won A1, they've won everything. I'm like, I'm really not going to feel anything that's going to like twist my brain and be like, I've never felt something like that. Do I feel like I'm going to feel a stronger arm than what I felt with in a prime John Brzezinski or Dave Chafee? Tit for tat.
I agree. My concerns for you, mate, are actually less. I speak to a lot of the lads in Europe and say, do you really rate Rob that highly? And I say, actually, yeah, I really do. I think Rob's one of the guys that could be world class wherever you drop him. Literally put a pin in the map, But I think it comes down to just that sharpening up your game. Literally just, okay, what tools for what guy? And of all those areas, I think the sort of power arm wrestlers, a match I'd love to see, and I was actually actively pursuing, and I'm still kind of actively pursuing, is Sasho and you. I fucking love that match. I want that match. That's a match I've spoken to World Arm Wrestling League about. It's a it's a great match, and I love that match. You know, I just think stylistically, I think it could be great.
Yeah, and I would like that because he falls in that category of super Europeans who I think he's won everything. I've seen him did he beat Prudnik at one point in time?
You know, he quite possibly could have done.
I want to say he beat, and I want to say in the same tournament he had a run where he beat Krasny and Prudnik, but I know that he beat Rustam as well when they were all in the same room. I think he had one tournament that he really tore ass, but then he's had a bunch of tournaments where, you know, when you see him training with Krasny, he seemed to be the dominant arm in the camp, and he's one of those definite super Europeans that, without doubt, I believe he's won multiple worlds as well. So, yeah, that's a great match, and there's definitely things that I would have to get used to in style. But I think if you gave me a 6-round format or best out of 5, I'd get a lot of data in round 1 or 2. And my arm is strong enough. I get so much focus on my hand because my hand is, weird, but I think it detracts from my arm, which led me down a path of darkness years back because I got so butthurt that people want to say, well, if I had your hand, I could be a champ. Well, if I had your hand, I'd never lose. Well, it's like all they want to deduce me to is like I'm some fucking hand that they can't actually pull. Yeah. And because of that, I started proving to people that I could hook, but I found myself in deeper grinds amongst the elites like John or whatever, just to show that I had an arm with it. But with that, I learned that I do have an arm. And if somebody wants to come in, when I pulled Craig Tullier came in super big, super strong, super fast. I think he's the closest thing we have to that European style, right? He can kind of knife in, come down hard, and now you're giving him a pad that's 2 inches bigger. And he's a guy that at a lighter weight took Todd Hutchings to the brink. And I was able to sit there and weather that storm on my arm alone. Mm. So I'm not saying I wouldn't find myself in an unfavorable position from the start, but sometimes, like I said about myself and John earlier, this is really the position I like to be in. It's a comfortable space.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a match that I'd love to see. You're in Conan's another one. How familiar are you with a lot of these guys, mate? Are you the student of the game?
I'm pretty familiar with both those guys because when the idea was being tossed around, I watched a lot of videos. I'm in a place where, I'll just say it like it is. It sounds pompous, but I've never not been able to take someone's hand that I've wanted to take. Never. And as dominant as John's hand was, he's always pulled away to get to the straps with me. I've always been able to make someone's hand work. And when I see a hand, there is hand strength and wrist strength and hand sizes and everything. But I see the skeleton of Sasho, and I can't believe that I can't flop that. I've thought about it 1,000 times, and I say I cannot see how I can't roll that guy's hand hard.
The thing with Sasho is he pulls almost in a flat position, using the palm and pressing. He's got a really great style in that respect to apply his side pressure, and it makes him really difficult. But I think you've got enough power to hang him up a little bit, and I think that could turn into a really entertaining battle. It's one I'd love to see. Do you find yourself watching other guys in or around that weight class? Do you watch people like Kochak and... Yeah.
I watch... Whenever there's a video comes out, I haven't been as active on YouTube in the years, in the last months. But yeah, I know about, you're talking about the guy from Turkey, Kochak?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go up and even all the weights, I look at guys that I feel, how they're built, where they are, and if I've ever seen their hand crack, if I see them kind of struggle in an area, because I feel like I'm adaptable enough to be proficient in any of those areas, and I just kind of envision, what I could do or would do. And I watch all those guys, and all high level guys. But yeah, wherever I can get data or ideas from, I'm always kind of peeking through the curtains.
Yeah, and it's be interesting. Obviously, that those conversations started to take place for World Arm Wrestling League right before we went on COVID-19 duty. So hopefully, touch wood.
Yeah.
If we can get this shit behind us. it'll be nice for a few of those conversations to start again. Ladies and gents, we're about 55 minutes into this show, Real Talk with R.V.J. Remember, if you want us to ask particular questions to Rob, please send us an email, guys, supernaturalstrengthchannel@gmail.com. That's supernaturalstrengthchannel@gmail.com. You can put them in the comments, PM, whatever you want to do to the channel, and we will get those questions to Rob on the next episode. Rob, thanks for joining us again, mate. I get the feeling we'll be talking again very soon in a different format about another area that's getting a lot of love. We haven't touched upon today, and we all know what that one is. But yeah, we'll be back with Rob again very soon. All the best to you and the family, brother, and I will speak to you again very soon. If this is your first time, Supernatural Strength Channel, ladies and gents, please like, share, subscribe, and until we see you next time, take it easy, peeps.
What grabs your eyes on that, if anything?